Welcome to the Hope and Wholeness Podcast, where we empower people to seize the day and flourish in life. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Duckworth, and I'm thrilled to have you aboard. I'm a disciple of Jesus, psychologist, husband, father, coach, real estate investor, and passionate mountain biker, and I'm here to walk alongside you. My mission? To infuse hope and foster wholeness into every aspect of your life. Each episode will give you a bird's eye view of authentic discussions on real life issues, followed by practical suggestions. Let's tackle your toughest questions and embark on this journey together. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the Hope and Wholeness Podcast. I am super excited to have Matt Sharp here with us today.
You say that now.
He's starting in already with the antics. Oh man, Matt has been a therapist at Hope and Wholeness Psychology Center now for what, almost 4 years, 3 years?
Yeah, since 2021.
Yeah. So he and I have been hanging out for about that amount of time, and he has always been a funny guy. But I'm glad to have him on the podcast today because he is going to talk a little bit about humor, and it's interesting to think about therapists and humor. I think the general perception is that therapists are
we're pretty stiff.
Stoic.
That's like the perception is like we're just these Zen-like creatures that just like tell me more, more, and that's fine. But yeah.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of where you're coming from, and just a little bit about your background.
Sure. I was born as a small child, and I won't go that far back. Now, if
we don't have an audience here. How are you going to do with that?
I entertain myself. It's all good. But you know the reference I'm getting to. Have you ever seen Steve Martin's The Jerk?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, then that reference I just made will make zero sense whatsoever, but that's all right. No, I started my career many, many moons ago in youth ministry because I wanted to be relevant. And then I decided 16 years into youth ministry, I wanted to be effective. And so I switched to senior pastoral ministry. And I didn't like doing all-nighters anymore. So that all kind of led to that transition and was a senior pastor. But in all those iterations, being present with people in crisis and just coming alongside and offering whatever help I could was always, to me, one of the best parts of what I did. And that and the preaching and the teaching and that I love. But there was always that stopping point as a pastor where, like, man, right when I felt like we were getting to the good stuff, like this is where the change could happen. It's like, well, and now I can't do anymore. I'm just a pastor. Let me get you referred to one of these counselor people. And eventually I'm like, well, why don't I just become one of those counselor therapy type people, and got my second master's degree and a lifetime of student debt to go with it. And here I am. And so I retired from vocational ministry. I still preach and teach. And then, began doing counseling, of course. Our paths crossed, and here we are. And then recently, I decided to engage in my voluntary midlife crisis and started doing stand-up comedy, which has been something I've loved and enjoyed for years, all the way back to 7th grade, doing I would rip off, my dad had the old vinyl records of comedians, and I would rip off their material and I'd repeat it on the playground, and no one got it because they don't understand, and neither did I. But I finally decided to do this. Started doing stand-up comedy and loved it, and discovered there's a lot of applications for it beyond just the funny of it, which is, I think, its own reward, but then started incorporating it into some therapy work, and then started also, and humor's always been a part of what I did, just bringing laughter, but started actually bringing some intentional things into the practice. So
yeah. So tell us about your project that you've been working on, this Stand-Up Therapy Live.
Stand-Up Therapy Live, yes, thank you. One of my passions is to try to work with especially men, because we as men are not especially known for being emotive and deeply self-reflective and doing the therapy work.
We're wound tight.
We are, yeah, a lot. But so part of my question is, how can I demystify therapy? How can I get in front of people in general, men in particular, and just help them see the world differently and kind of make it okay to do this sort of work? So Stand-Up Therapy Live was kind of the expression of that. So I do stand up. I'm performing in a couple of weeks from the time of this recording again. And but then there's a couple of programs that I've developed that can be either work coming into a corporate setting and showing how to use humor to reduce stress, increase creativity and such, and then also some outreach programs for churches involving comedy. Kind of all are growing out of this fun little endeavor for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I know you told me about a little bit about that stuff already, and I'm really excited about what you're doing with churches in particular
yeah,
because what you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're going in on maybe like a Saturday to do a comedy show
hmm
and, inviting everybody in the whole community and getting as many people there as you can,
hmm
do a fun comedy show. And then basically, as people are loosened up and getting to like you a little bit and trust you a little bit,
hopefully.
yeah, then basically putting the invitation out like, hey, I'm preaching again tomorrow morning, Sunday morning,
hmm
and you're all welcome back. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's been interesting how when we say we're doing an outreach, people think that there's going to be this deep, sad, emotional moment where we all cry and then we pray a prayer. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of the Billy Graham style of doing outreach. It's fine, but that's just not how I'm wired. To me, the outreach of the events we're doing is not the event. The outreach is not me. The outreach is you as a church member inviting your friend to show up.
Hmm.
Now, when I do this event, yes, it's jokes, it's funny stories, it's about a 2 hour event between myself and the other guy that comes with, and we have an opening act, and but it all ties around the issue of identity. How do we figure out who
Hmm.
we are and why it matters? A deeply
Hmm.
theological and psychological question that we laugh about.
Hmm.
And at the end, I just say, if you want to hear how I've wrestled through the identity questions, come back here tomorrow. I'll be preaching. It's not comedy, but I will explain from a faith perspective how I've answered the
Yeah.
identity question.
Yeah.
And the hope is that people will just kind of get used to going, yeah, this church is okay to go to. Let's
Yeah.
let's do this again. And that's my hope.
Yeah. That sounds
So
awesome.
yeah, it'll be fun.
I love that. I love the partnership with churches. I think churches, I suppose you could lump churches and men generically into the same category of they're really wound tight and
A little bit.
they take things very, very seriously. And of course,
Yes.
there's a time to take things seriously.
Yes.
But I think that when that becomes the pervasive culture of your family or your church of taking things so seriously, not being able to loosen up a little bit,
Mhm.
or even to understand um, s- nuances of some situations.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I love that bringing humor into that can really loosen people up and
Absolutely.
connect
Good.
them.
And I appreciate the connection too, because yes, churches as a whole, men in particular, again, can be both emotionally constipated. There's just a little bit of a backup of we just need to let some of the funny out, or
Yeah,
it comes out somewhere else, I guess. So
yeah,
it's good fun.
yeah. Well, and it's really sad too how our culture has promoted that tendency for men not to express their emotions. In fact, I
hmm
was just watching a movie the other day, an old Disney movie, and the mother in the movie tells the children like, "Oh, your father loves you. Just give him some grace." But the father never says that he loves his
Oh no,
kids.
no,
And the father never treats his kids like he really likes them.
yeah,
And just this is as I was watching that, of course, as a movie I watched as a child, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this is like
yeah,
the
it's the
culture that
message.
we grew up in. It's still the message that's being sent is like, okay, you can, your dad loves you, but he doesn't say it. And then
Mm-mm.
we grow up thinking our dad doesn't love us. And of course, who do we tend to think Jesus and God are like? That
Yeah,
our fathers.
our heavenly Father, He's just like our
Hmm.
earthly Father, and that's yeah,
Yeah. But
not good.
I mean, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. I am not an expert in this, but I like to tell people that like when you imagine God as this kind of person who's up there just serious with his arms crossed and doling out punishment or discipline
hmm
or whatever else, and who doesn't seem to care about all of the horrible things that are happening on Earth, um, like tell us what your thoughts are on kind of the softer or potentially the more humorous side of God and Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got to realize, yes, God is the judge. Yes, He is righteous, and He is all of those things. And He's the guy who made the platypus. I mean, that's just a creature that you look at and go, it's a beaver, it's a duck, it's a mammal, it lays eggs. Even the Darwinians like, I give up. I got nothing. I have nothing at all. So He has this amazing creativity in Him. And
Mhm.
if you really break down humor and what is it, let me go all the way back to laughter is a gift of God. Laughter is an expression of joy, and joy is kind of our natural, ideal state of being. What do we experience in the presence of the Lord when we're in with Him for all eternity in heaven? What are we going to be feeling? Sadness? No, I don't
Mhm.
think so.
Right.
We'll be having joy, and laughter is the expression of joy. Humor is the situation where laughter can happen,
Mm,
and comedy is the intentional process of making humor.
mm,
And so that's why I really enjoy it.
yeah.
As far as our emotional constipation as men and as Christians, at least for us as men, it's interesting. As I've looked back on it, we've been culturally conditioned to transition every emotional experience we have, especially the negative ones, into anger.
Mm, mhm,
If I'm sad, I'm angry. If I'm
mhm,
scared, I'm certainly angry. If I'm afraid, oh my God, I'm angry. If even when we're happy, we get angry. What are we doing at the football games? We're yelling
mhm,
and screaming
mhm.
obscenities at people because we're
Yeah,
happy, and
yeah,
that's a cultural
yeah.
transition that we're conditioned with.
It's all a
And
big cover up.
it is, and because if I start crying, and don't worry for those watching at home, I'm not going to demonstrate, but I just need to cry. No, it's when we have a full range of emotions, it is an honor to God, because all of our emotions. I mean, you know this, but it is all of our emotions are a gift of God. They give us motivation to do the tasks that we need to accomplish in a moment. I
Mhm,
need to run from the thing I'm afraid of. I need to charge the thing that is a threat and that I'm angry with. I
mhm,
need to sit down and just weep for a while because I've lost something. And when we have that full range of emotions, we actually honor God. But as men in North America, we are often so unaware of or afraid of the softer negative emotions like fear and sadness that just everything gets turned into anger. And it's fascinating to me because if you and I, as men, get mad and put our hand through the wall,
mhm,
people would say, don't do that. It's not a
mhm.
good, fix the wall, please.
Yeah.
But nobody's really going to look at us as men and go, there's something wrong with them. But if a woman does that, oh, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of unfortunate names that we call that situation. At the same time, women are often culturally, and I know these are broad generalizations, and,
Mhm,
and especially at least I see it more in the female dimension that is changing. But women have been culturally conditioned to turn everything into sadness. If
mm,
I'm mad at you, I cry. If I'm sad, I cry. If I'm
mhm,
afraid, I cry. And so again, same thing. If a female, again, stereotypically and generally, is stopped by a police officer and starts crying, nobody's gonna go, "What's wrong with you?"
mhm.
There. But if we as men start crying because we get pulled over, everyone, something's off.
Yeah.
But there's this cultural dynamic as well. So what I love about humor in all of this is it really pulls us out of wherever we're stuck
Mm,
emotionally, because the one emotion that's okay for everybody is laughter.
yeah.
It's okay to laugh. I mean, certain funerals probably not the best spot to be doing an open mic set, but
Yeah.
um, humor and laughter is an okay thing that we all are comfortable
Mm,
doing, and it really allows us to start to access a deeper level of our emotions, and,
yeah.
and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
So I know that you are also, I don't know, would you say that you're a cognitive therapist in
yes,
terms of, yeah, and that is what I would identify as too. And one of the big tasks of cognitive therapy is helping people see a different perspective because we get stuck in patterns of thinking and ways of thinking.
hmm
And we really oftentimes make conclusions or develop beliefs based on how we feel and not based on the actual facts of a situation.
yes.
And so I know that you have a particular tool that you use in therapy to help people get that different perspective.
I feel like you're setting me up to say,
So tell us how you do that, because I don't know, I'm not great at doing that.
well, I mean, ultimately, from the cognitive therapy world, it's a all humor is a reframe.
Hmm.
And for those at home who don't know, cognitive reframing is just whenever we see a situation, we put a frame of meaning and understanding around it. This is what makes it make sense to us,
Hmm.
and that's what we assume is true. Reframing is just a way of shifting that frame, of questioning our own understanding, and forcing ourselves to look at a situation from a different perspective. And the quick illustration that I've done with people is when I was driving once to Detroit to visit my son, there was a sign on the side of the road that said, blind cleaning and repair, and then a phone number. Now, what is the right interpretation of that sign is, well, this is a person who will come to my house and will clean or repair my blinds. But I read it as blind cleaning and repair. And my thought was, how does he know when he's done? Yeah, I just kind of imagine this guy like, where are your blinds and how am I going to clean them? It's the exact same information, but just that little bit of a shift in a reframe allows people, to see it differently. Now, obviously, we all know that I don't, at least I assume anyway, it's not a visually impaired person trying to clean my windows, but just that shift allows us to make a connection to another set of data that is funny and out of place. in therapy, we can do that when somebody comes in and they're locked into one perspective and worldview, and just to help them, even with humor. There's some great techniques from David Burns on paradoxical magnification, where we just go, yeah, this is the worst ever. Yeah, it's totally the worst, and just we can totally expand on what people are saying to the point where they're laughing at their own interpretation gently, and can kind of see it as, yeah, that's a little silly, isn't it? So I don't know if that answered your question fully, but
Yeah,
but
that does. Do you have an example that comes to your mind of when you've used this in therapy and it was really funny?
I have several actually, and unfortunately, most of them are highly inappropriate. A lot of them were just when a client would say something that we all know what they meant, but the context, and I've had clients like stop mid sentence because they realized they said something that just sounded like an innuendo. It really wasn't. We all know it, but that was kind of the humor of it. But
Well, it may have had deeper meaning. I mean, that's what Freud would say.
yeah, Freud would say that, yes, and thankfully I'm not a Freudian. So we can just acknowledge some things are slips of the tongue that were just sort of funny, and so. But yeah, and of course now I'll come back to that one because I'll have one percolating here for a minute. But
Gotcha. So, um, how do you navigate some of those content issues? I mean, you said that we do deal with some things in therapy, obviously, that are not necessarily inappropriate to have a conversation about or even to laugh about, but not necessarily appropriate in, I guess, on a podcast or something like that. But how do
Sure.
you navigate those types of issues, both in therapy, in your personal life, and as a comedian? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are very particular about what they think is appropriate or not appropriate.
yes, and I'll be the first to say there is content in comedy that's just flat out inappropriate, and I'll be the first to say, and that needs to be said, not by me. I very much am a what they would call a clean comic. Obviously, if
Mhm.
I'm going into churches, I don't drop cuss words. I don't make gross sexual references, or call out racial stereotypes or anything else like that. So the tension for Christians is we want obviously content that is family friendly, positive. Those are the kind of the buzzwords, or just something that I can walk out of a show and not feel like I need to, take a bath afterwards. Um, that I think is, that's obviously the kind of humor I do. There are those comedians out there that I cringe at 100%, but I want them to be out there. I want them to be able to say those difficult and inappropriate things. Not because I agree with them. I think they're idiots, but I mean, lovingly, I say that. But at some point, because if you think about it, just in terms of creative expression or even biblical expression, because those people are out there, testing the limits of what is socially appropriate, and some of it fails, some of it doesn't fail. As far failure in comedy is if it doesn't get a laugh,
Mm.
because they're out there saying that, whatever that is. I know that I, as a Christian comedian, can say what I'm going to say. I also know that as a pastor, I can preach the word, because if we actually look at the content of Scripture, there's some really ugly, rough, inappropriate things in there. And so, how long, once we start saying, well, we have to ban this guy, or cancel is the new word, cancel this guy or this gal because of what they said, I disagree with it completely, but I want them to say it, because I want my words, I want God's words, more importantly, to be spoken without fear of, well, that's inappropriate. You can't say it.
Yeah.
So now the tension there is, I'm not going to say those words, but I'll still find that guy really funny.
Yeah.
There are many comedians where I'll laugh and go, well, I need to repent after hearing that. But man, that was hilarious, though. Part of the challenge, too, for us as Christians is, I think, because we have such narrow definitions of what is Christian entertainment, it becomes very difficult for us to laugh.
Mhm.
And there are things about Christians that we need to laugh about. Here's one. And as someone who speaks, I've probably been in hundreds, if not more, churches throughout my life and career and ministry and speaking and all that.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but next time you're in a church men's room, see if they have the following verse. I've seen it on multiple walls above the urinal, John 7:38. Out of you will flow streams of living water. Like, no, this is the wrong verse there. I mean, there are men of a certain age praying that they never have that happen in a public restroom, And we put that verse up there. I don't know why we put it in bathrooms. It doesn't belong there because this is Jesus talking about this poetic magnificence of eternal life, and we put it and made it a urinal reference. It's like, but it feels spiritual then. The actual right verse would be my ordination verse, Deuteronomy 23:12-14, which says, designate a place outside of the camp for you to go and relieve yourself, and as part of your equipment, carry with you a shovel to cover up to dig a hole and cover up your excrement, for the Lord your God is holy and moves about your camp. That is an actual Bible verse. Look it up, Deuteronomy 23:12-14 in the New International Version. That's the actual appropriate verse to put in a church bathroom. But if we put it in the church bathroom, people in the church would freak out. Like, that's inappropriate. Yeah, so at some point in time, because we have so little room for any nuance, we wind up doing bad things to turn Jesus' reference of eternal life into a bathroom decoration. That's actually not okay, but it sounds spiritual, so then we think it's fine. Like, we struggle with content as Christians. So you're going to be thinking about that verse later.
I hear that. I am. I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like, what other verses have I seen in inappropriate places? It happens quite often.
It does. And when your brain works like my brain works, you can't help but go, yep. So,
yep.
But it is a challenge to navigate the content, because again, at the same time, we want to be God honoring in our speech. At the same time, there are things that need to be made fun of. That comedy is a prophetic act. It is.
Okay, go ahead and explain.
Okay. Well, you'll appreciate it. Well, let's go into Carl Jung for our psychological people.
All right.
For those at home watching, one of Carl Jung's things was the archetypes. There's different ones, and he drew out the archetype of the jester.
And these archetypes are basically, I suppose you could say, they're roles that people play.
Yeah, roles, kind of internal templates. You have things like the warrior, the king, the lover, the sage. I can't think of the rest, the magician, things like that. And there's different ways of kind of functioning in the world. And he based it all on kind of the medieval court and different roles like that, the hero's journey and such. But there's this role called the jester. And if you think about the jester in terms of the king's court, the jester can say to the king what no one else can say without being thrown in jail or beheaded,
right,
because he can say it with humor. Mm-hmm. When we do comedy right, we can speak the truth to power, whether that's political power. Whoever the president is and will be always needs to be made fun of, because we can't. There's not a lot of political comedy. Yeah, North Korea, not a lot of stand-ups there working on, hey, let me tell you some Kim Jong-un jokes, We have the ability to make fun of our leaders, and we need to. Sometimes they need to be made fun of. We do that with the church, too. Not Jesus, but the church. There are things in the church that we need to call out as ridiculous because they are.
Yeah.
Have you ever you're familiar with the phrase love offering?
Yes.
Yeah, we as Christians, we just know that means we're going to take up an offering and give it to the guy who comes to speak. Okay, do you know what that sounds like to non-Christians? It sounds like we're auctioning off marriable daughters or something, like they have no idea what love offering sounds like. It sounds weird and inappropriate, but we just throw these terms around and we never think about, like, how does that actually sound to someone who's not one of the clique, so to speak.
Yeah. So making fun of people or institutions that are in power is a privilege that comedians or all of us have, in our country at least, and helps us to basically call things out in a different way.
Yes. And we can soften things, we can challenge things, and we can say the thing that no one else can say, but we're all kind of thinking. So shows politically, like The Daily Show or some of those Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, some of the things that they say about the people in power are hilarious, and sadly sometimes very true. Some of their comments on both, again, I know we're not taking political sides. I'm certainly not. But you look at our current presidential candidates at the time of this recording, we have Biden and Trump going back and forth, both of which there are serious concerns about both men. Well, who's pointing them out? Usually it's the clowns. Usually it's the comedian saying, like, we really should look at this differently. And so,
yeah,
I think it's helpful. So,
yep. Yeah. It's about, I think comedy is about to be not quite so funny when it comes to our presidential candidates.
I think part of the problem is the jokes write themselves too easily.
I think that is part of the problem. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And all of us complain, but it doesn't seem like anybody is in positions of power are doing anything about the candidates.
Yep, that's a whole can of worms that I will leave to the comedians.
All right. So you have some thoughts about positive psychology and laugh therapy. Tell
hmm
us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the field of positive psychology, as I understand it, it kind of follows along the same developmental course as building health and nutrition and those sorts of things in the physical medicine, because medicine started as let's fix the problem. And then later on, they said, well, what does health actually mean? And
Hmm.
let's maybe take some vitamins or,
Yeah.
let's wash our hands and we'll introduce something called being discharged from the hospital, things like that. I think it was the 90s. It was when we first really started having the discipline of positive psychology. I know Martin Seligman and a few others. You know who actually has a master's degree in positive psychology now?
Who?
The comedian Yakov Smirnov.
Really?
Yes, he was for a while doing his show in Branson. I don't even know if he's still performing, but he took a break and got a master's degree in positive psychology for this very reason. I found that out after just kind of digging into some of this stuff. But the idea of positive psychology is, yes, as therapists, we treat mental illness, but what is mental health actually? How do we define it? It's not just the absence of a problem. What is mental health? And so I enjoy Seligman's PERMA um, acronym. Are you familiar?
No.
Okay.
Tell us.
So PERMA says that positive, healthy, mental function is defined by the P is positive emotions. We just want to, we want to feel love and joy and peace and these positive emotions. Engagement, where I'm uh, tackling problems that I have the skill set to conquer these problems. Relationships, that are deep and meaningful and positive. Meaning and purpose. I'm here for a reason. Like there's my existence is not an accident.
Hmm.
And then of course a sense of achievement or accomplishment. I have done something that is of value, and those are some of those key features of positive psychology that really contributes to our mental health. And the best part is laughter and humor builds all of those. Because obviously laughter, comes from a place of joy. That's a positive
Hmm.
emotion. Engagement, when an audience, in particular in a stand-up comedy setting, or even when somebody, let's take it out of what I do, because not many of us do the stand-up thing. When
Right.
when we're just telling stories together, or here's a fun thing that happened to me. Doesn't matter if it's just me and you, or there's 10 people or 1,000. We're all in that moment with you, and so there's that engagement together. The relationships are actually strengthened because we can feel more human with each other. Meaning and purpose and accomplishment, all of those facets of positive mental health are increased just by having some time to laugh together. The process of laugh therapy, and where I'll start bringing it in as a lot of homework assignments, when a client has a lot of just sort of chronic depression. Um, I'll so I'll actually steal from Saint Ignatius. How's that for a left turn?
Okay.
Saint Ignatius would do this spiritual exercise called the daily examine, where you look at your life and find three moments when you were far from God or things weren't going well, and you offer them up in prayer and just say, Lord, um, thank you for allowing these bad things to happen, not because they're good, but because it shows me where I need to grow. And then find three good things, moments when you're close to God and things are going well, and just give thanks for them. So I've taken kind of the back half of that, and I'll give it to a client as a gratitude discovery assignment, as the beginning of laugh therapy, and say, I want you every day to find three different things you're grateful for, but they can never be the same three things. And so, first day is easy. I'm grateful for, my house, my clothes, my food, or something like that.
Hmm.
And then just keep teaching them to drill into that. Okay, so if they come back and they say, I'm really grateful for my car. Okay, this week, come up with three things about your car that you're grateful for. I'm grateful that there's tires so that I can have a smooth ride. I'm grateful there's air conditioning so I'm not exfoliating on the way to work. I'm grateful for a sound system because I can enjoy my music, or something like that. Just to always be reframing and looking, and then we can actually take some of those and find ways to laugh and to just find the joy in the moment. So that becomes a humor or gratitude journal that they can start to put together, and we have a lot of fun going through those in session.
I bet.
Yes.
So, what sort of recommendations might you give to therapists, pastors, or other people that work in these settings that are typically pretty serious, that are known to be a little bit more maybe intense or something like that?
Mhm.
What types of suggestions do you have?
Well, for those, you mean intense as in like they're a very serious person?
Yeah, well, I just think that we're talking about how humor can really be a benefit to people,
Yes.
and especially as healthcare professionals, pastors, other people who are in kind of this caretaking profession.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that we're very good at bringing humor into these types of situations or using humor effectively.
No, we're usually not. Um, and I think part of the challenge is if we try to, if somebody walks away from this and says, I need to bring in more humor, well, we're going to go find 101 dad jokes book and just try to like pepper them into the conversation. That's never going to work.
Well, maybe it would work with Chuck Norris
Definitely Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris jokes always work.
jokes.
And if they don't, he just manifests somewhere and kicks us in the head. So yeah, but no, just throwing a joke in that's not incorporating humor. That's just throwing in a fortune cookie. That's
Right.
funny. For us to truly bring humor into a process, we have to cultivate our own sense of humor. If
Mhm.
I can't find something to laugh at in a situation, I mean, not all situations obviously, but if I can't, like I gave the example of the blind cleaner
Mhm.
as we were coming here. That was just me driving down the road, and I just saw that out of the corner of my eye and go, hmm. So cultivating our own sense of humor, being able to laugh at ourselves. I have a whole joke that I do. I don't know if it shows. I don't know where the camera's gonna cut me off, but I have a nice donut around my diaphragm, which is ironically caused by a love of donuts. Which who knew that would make me fat? Besides every medical doctor and nutritionist on the entire planet. I have to be able to laugh at myself. And if somebody's coming across as the very serious type, well, that
Mhm.
they have to be able to find, the self awareness to say, I'm pretty serious.
Mhm.
How can I find that funny?
Mm.
Like the big blue eagle on the Muppets, is nothing sacred. There's tremendous humor there that we can find. So cultivating our own sense of humor about ourselves is a great way to start reframing our own life.
Excellent.
So,
So you're going to do a CE program, right, for all the continuing education program for all the therapists out there on how to find themselves funny.
yes, there's actually an organization. This is no joke. The Association for the Application of Therapeutic Humor.
Really? All right.
Yep.
There you go.
And so, yeah, there is. And there's actually a couple of books out there that can help us start to put together. One of the exercises I do, I'll just give this example. One of the exercises I do in a workshop called Laugh Therapy is I'll get a group together, however many people, and we'll brainstorm usually 3 words, just random words. So I'll just kind of pull from the audience. Give me a noun of something, then a car or sandwich or just 3 random words. I'll write them up on the board, and each person has a piece of paper and little sticky notes. And I'll give them a time frame. For the next 2 minutes, I want you to think of as many things about your pick a word. So let's say car. And then I want you to write as many thoughts you have about the car, how you use it, what it might look like, um, features of a car, anything you can think of about a car. Write one on a sticky note, put it on your paper, just as many, fill your paper with as many sticky notes of ideas as you can in 2 minutes. And then I gather them together. That's just like cars have wheels, cars have windows, cars have air conditioning, cars, pull the family, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put them together in a group with the other people who picked car or sandwich or their word. And they all have their little sheet and they all have their little pieces of paper on there. And I say, now I want you to put together groups of 3, 2 that are similar and 1 that is different. That's the beginning of a joke. It's a joke formula called 1 and 2 in turn.
Okay.
2 things that are the same, 1 that is radically bigger or smaller or just different. A comedian that is very controversial, his name's Jeff Ross. He's the roast master. He stood up at a gathering to do a very serious in memoriam section for comedians who all passed away in the same year. And that year happened to be Bob Saget, Gilbert Godfrey, Louis Anderson, and Norm Macdonald. All those comedians passed away in the same year. And so he was doing like an in memoriam retrospective. And so as a comedian, he got up and we got to have some humor in there, right? Well, he did 1 and 2 in turn with that. He says, I'm here to spend some time and pay tribute to all the comedians we lost this year. Bob Saget, Louis Anderson, Norm Macdonald, Gilbert Godfrey, Will Smith. because and that was the turn, because obviously Will Smith has not passed away, but that was the same year he got in trouble for slapping Chris Rock,
Oh.
and so his career kind of went through a detour there.
Will Smith's or the comedians?
Will Smith, yeah,
Okay.
the comedian's doing fine.
Okay.
He makes a living doing that, but he got a great laugh because, again, we all know that at that time we assumed, well, Will Smith's career is over now. Whether it is or not, who knows? But that was the turn, and so
Yeah.
just by taking two features of a car and putting it together with one that isn't, I can show people how to start writing jokes out of these seemingly random comparisons, and suddenly we're all comedy writers. Who knew?
That seems like a really good homework assignment.
It is. It's a lot of fun, especially when people come up with much more creative words than car and sandwich too. So
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
it's good fun.
I can imagine that being a really fun and interesting technique to use with people in general. I think in the caring profession type of realm.
Yep, I have a version of the laugh therapy workshop for healthcare, for educators, and for customer service, because folks in customer service need it, because they hear insane things from people who are losing their mind over their sandwiches wrong at I was just at Culver's the other day. I ordered chicken tenders at the drive-thru, pulled away, and I had pretzel bites. I'm like, close. So, just if I'm the guy who's going to go in there and tear somebody, his head off for giving me the wrong food, the person behind the counter should probably know how to receive and respond with a little bit of humor and grace to de-escalate a situation. So
Right. I mean, but who would really be disappointed with pretzel bites? I mean,
it wasn't a bad thing. It was just, I guess I didn't need as much protein today as I thought. So,
yeah. Pretzel bites are one of the things I can use to manipulate my wife, actually, because she craves them. And so
Oh.
when she craves something, I see that as an opportunity to manipulate her. So
that seems healthy.
Yeah, I know. So I just. But in all seriousness and in all funniness, my wife does get cravings very frequently for food items.
Mm.
And so it is a fun opportunity to tease her and
Oh,
to.
absolutely.
We were on our way home the other day, and it was like every restaurant we were passing. Oh my goodness, can we stop there? Oh my goodness, can we stop there? Oh my goodness, can we stop there? And I was like, well, you'll have to pay your own money, I guess. She's like, okay, fine. I got free pretzel bites out of it.
Dude, this seems like wisdom, man.
All right. So, what other thoughts do you have for us, just as people who I think need more humor in their lives, Matt?
Mhm. Yeah, and the point of what I do is never to say we just need to be laughing all the time.
Right.
Yeah, because there are so many. I mean, we turn on the news, the world is full of darkness and ugly. And we have to look at it. The Bible says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is beautiful, think on these things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what's true isn't pretty. We see this all the time. There are ugly, ugly moments and choices that people make. And if that's all we see, this world becomes a very dark place.
Mhm.
Humor does not delete the bad things. Humor allows us to see that there is still good happening. There are still beautiful and noble things happening. And it also allows us, when the ugly thing happens, when it's appropriate, we're able to reframe our despair with hope. And that's a powerful thing, very powerful thing. A couple of moons ago, I worked as a chaplain at the hospital, and I would be called in for level 1 traumas. This is car accidents, gunshot wounds, horrible situations. And again, not that we're doing,
Right.
stand up here, but there was something powerful that took place when someone who's just had one of the worst nights of their lives, they're not going to fall down laughing, but when they can just go, ha, and smile just a little bit, there's something that's powerful that takes place where it says, it's going to be okay. Not tomorrow, but at some point in time.
Yeah.
I was called in one time. This is a story I've shared publicly with the hospital in a training, and it was I was called in one time because the call was snowplow versus pedestrian. Now I'm thinking this is going to be horrible, right? And I get to the hospital. It's kind of late at night on a snowy night, and I get there, and there's nobody in the trauma bay. Now ERs are set up so like the really bad ones are in trauma bays, and that's everything you see on ER. And there's tons of people, and there's lots of activity. Those are all dark. Nobody's in there. Like, you would think a guy got hit by a snowplow would be, nope. He was in one of the side rooms. He was awake. He was with his wife, and he's talking. It turns out that he just had stepped into the street to turn his snowplow and go back up his driveway, and a snowplow came around the corner and hit him. And he's in bed, had broke his legs, But other than that, that's serious. But he lived and he was awake, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, I told my wife I fought the plow and the plow won." And I said, "Sir, I never want to disagree with you in front of your wife, but if the plow won, she and I would be having a very different conversation. Let's call it a draw." And he just started chuckling and laughing. It's not that funny of a joke, but he was able to crack up a little bit. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
don't make me laugh. That hurts." And just that moment of taking the serious moment, adding a little bit of humor, was for him something that brought hope and kind of it's going to be okay, to this sort of moment. So he thanked me for it later. So.
That's excellent. All right. Well, I don't have anything else, Matt.
Well, thanks.
But
I could go for a long time, but we'll quit because at some point I'll just start going into material, and then I got to charge more for that. But
all right. Well, thanks so much for being here. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything like that, we would love to respond to them in comments on Facebook or YouTube. And you can also shoot your questions via email to podcast.hwpc@gmail.com, and we'd love to respond to them.
Oh, also, if they do want to know anything more about what I'm doing, standuptherapylive.com, it is important to say if they have any complaints about anything they've heard on the show, they can send that to me. My complaint email is complaints@wh.gov. So,
excellent.